She was shy, rejected, and decided to create mysteries that no one in the world could decipher. This sentence sounds like something out of a movie script, but it was the real decision of a woman who, when no one else believed in her, decided to believe in herself. An author who didn't shout to be heard, but who wrote so profoundly that the whole world, one day, stopped to listen. Have you ever felt too invisible to make a difference? As if the world spoke too loudly, while your voice deep inside was just a timid whisper trying to survive amidst rejections, doubts, and silences? Maybe you've been in that place where everything seems too small for such a big dream. And it's precisely there, at that exact point where many give up, that the most powerful stories are born. Those that not only inspire, but that light. A kind of fire inside us that is not easily extinguished. Here, every story is a spark. Every video is a safe space to remember who you are, even when the world tries to make you forget. And if you think this story is just about books and fame, you might be in for a surprise. Because what made Agatha Christie the most widely read author in history wasn't an isolated talent, nor was it an opportunity that fell from the sky. It was a silent choice, an invisible decision that changed everything. Have you ever been there? That moment when everything seems to say no, but deep down, something still pushes you forward. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover now may surprise you, and maybe, for the first time, make you look at your own story in a completely new way. Agatha Christie's life did not begin in the spotlight. She was born into a time when women were trained to obey, not to write. And yet, amidst the chaos, the pain, and the invisibility, she decided, if no one listens to me, then they will listen to my characters. This choice was not a cry of revolt. It was a silent gesture of courage. And that's what makes her much more than a mystery writer. It makes her a real-life example of how visible results often come from. Invisible decisions. It's not about being seen now. It's about what you're building while no one is looking. With every line written in the early hours of the morning, with every page rejected, she was, without knowing it, writing one of the greatest legacies of world literature. And while the world said it was a waste of time, she was creating new time. But how did this turnaround happen? What made the world start to see what was previously ignored? That's what we're going to find out. Now, she didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. She just had to not give up. She just had to keep writing, even when no one was reading. Even when the no's came before she could even finish a story. It was there, in the silent early morning, between a cup of tea and scribbled pages, that Agatha Christie began to change the world, without fanfare, without an audience, without permission, and maybe without realizing it. She's changing her world right now. Because when we hear a story like this, it's almost impossible not to see ourselves reflected in some part of it. Sometimes it's in the rejection. Sometimes in the desire to start something new, even when we're afraid. Sometimes in the silence that screams louder than any external noise. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what has touched you the most so far. What has this story sparked inside you? It is in your perspective, in your response, that this space gains meaning. Your experience, your pain, your turning point, all of this is also part of this conversation. And it may be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Like this video if it has made you feel something. This helps the platform understand that this type of content matters. And if you want to continue immersing yourself in stories that remind you of who you are, even when the world tries to make you forget, subscribe to the channel here. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of message. People who, just like you, carry an entire universe inside, waiting for the courage to turn the page, because the story is not over yet. In fact, It is just beginning ... because every story of transformation begins with something that seems like an end. And Agatha was no different. Before becoming the mind behind the greatest mysteries in literature, she lived her own inner enigma. How to continue when the world seems to have decided your destiny for you. She was born in a time when silence was the safest place for a woman, where the expectation was clear: get married, shut up, and fulfill the role she was given, with no room for invention, no room for questioning. Agatha was introspective, and this only fueled the idea that she would never have a leading role. Those who looked from the outside saw only a shy woman without any major ambitions. But what no one saw was what was happening inside that. She grew up surrounded by books, and perhaps that was what saved her identity in the midst of a society that tried to erase it. Between one page and another, she found worlds where she could exist without having to ask for permission. But not even books were enough to shield her from the abysses that real life prepared. She married young, as was expected of her. And behind appearances, she lived a troubled marriage, full of crises and painful silences. In one of these moments, Agatha simply disappeared for days. Literally. The world was looking for her, but perhaps she was more than physically lost. Trying to find herself again emotionally. It's hard to put a finer point on the impact this period had on her. But if there's one thing these experiences reveal, it's that rock bottom isn't always where everything ends. Sometimes it's where something begins, because that's where the false layers fall away. The external pressures collapse, and only the real thing remains. It was at this point that Agatha began to write for real. Not for vanity, not for glory, but because it was what was left. It was what she had. And that was enough to light the spark. This is the kind of revelation that rarely appears behind the scenes of success. We usually see the golden cover of the book, the famous name in the shop window, but not the moments of anguish that precede all of this. We don't see the woman facing her own pain, trying to put into words what she herself didn't fully understand. This is the territory where the hidden truth of overcoming is revealed. When no one sees, when no one validates, when the only thing that exists is your choice to continue, even without certainty, even with fear. And here comes a change in mindset. That can completely change the way you see your own journey. You don't need to be strong all the time. What truly transforms is silent continuity. It's writing even without knowing if anyone will read it. It's continuing even when the only response you have is the echo of your own thoughts. This applies to creation, to new beginnings, to personal projects, to any transformation you want to experience. It's not about waiting to be ready. It's about deciding to go. And that's what Agatha did. She went. Without a manual, without applause, without a map. And maybe that's exactly the invitation hidden within this story. That you too trust what's being born inside you. Even if no one understands it yet. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. I really want to know who felt the same way as me. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because this is where everything starts to change. Not on the outside, but on the inside. After going through crises that could have made anyone give up, Agatha Christie did something that often goes unnoticed in great stories of overcoming. She made an invisible decision. Invisible because it was not accompanied by the spotlight, likes, or immediate validation. Invisible because only she knew what that choice meant. And yet, it was that decision that changed absolutely everything. If no one wants to hear my voice, then they'll listen to my characters. It wasn't just a catchphrase. It was a silent pact with herself. A kind of inner revolution. The kind that makes no noise but causes earthquakes inside. Agatha didn't want to prove anything to anyone. She just wasn't willing to keep quiet forever. And that's precisely where the power of true transformation lies. in the choice to move forward, even when there's no guarantee of arrival, even when the world offers no applause, no direction, no certainty. She began writing her first crime novel, in the midst of chaos. Not in a beautiful office with free time and support, but in the midst of pain, in the midst of doubt, in the midst of a life that seemed to be slowly imploding. And this changes everything, because it shows that great works are not born in ideal conditions. They are born amid pressure, maladjustment, fear, but also the courage to keep creating. Anyway, have you ever noticed how some of the most powerful decisions in your life were made when no one else was watching? Maybe it was in the silence of a room, in the middle of the night when you couldn't sleep, or in a moment of rupture when everything around you seemed to be falling apart. There is a hidden truth in the journey of those who decide to grow. More often than not, the world only recognizes the impact after the decision has already been made. And that's exactly what happened to her. Writing, at that moment, was not a strategy. It was survival. It was a way of existing in a world that had tried to convince her that she was worthless. And it was in that space between the invisible and the unbearable that Agatha gave life to something that no one had ever done before. She didn't just want to create a crime story. She wanted to invent a mystery that not even the greatest experts could solve. It was as if she were saying, if they're going to ignore me, then at least they shouldn't be able to decipher. This deep authorial mindset of putting emotion, truth, and genius into something that is born in the dark is one of the most powerful keys to any creative, professional, or emotional journey, because it shows that you don't need to have everything figured out to start. You just need to decide that you're going to keep going, even if no one understands it yet, even if it seems like little. And this is where her story stops being just inspiring and starts being transformative. Because by writing what the world had yet to see, she was also writing a new version of herself, a version that didn't ask for permission, a version that no longer needed to prove its worth to exist, a version that began right then and there to become eternal. Write in the comments, this makes sense to me. I want to know who else feels this change coming. Because the most impressive thing about a journey like this is realizing what happens when a silent decision finds its echo in the world. When that choice, made in the dark, begins to take shape, color, and name. What Agatha Christie built after that intimate moment of personal revolution surpasses any definition of success. She didn't just publish a book. She wrote a new page in the history of literature, and also in the way the world sees women who dare to write, think, and create. Her name, which had previously sounded insignificant in social circles, began to be mentioned alongside the greatest of all time, behind only the Bible and Shakespeare. Yes, you heard right. Over 2 billion copies sold. But this number, as grandiose as it may seem, still does not fully convey her impact. Because Agatha did not just build numbers. She built a universe. She created characters that spanned generations, languages, and cultures. Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple are not just fictional detectives. They are symbols of genius, cunning, and human complexity. They are reflections of the author herself, someone who transformed pain into enigma, loneliness into strategy, and silence into immortal literature. There is something almost magical about realizing that a shy, rejected, discredited woman has become a legend, but not a distant, unattainable legend. What makes Agatha Christie so powerful is precisely the fact that her turnaround did not come from an external miracle. It came from an internal gesture, a choice to continue even without knowing where it would lead. And perhaps this is one of the most important revelations of this entire journey. The visible results, the great legacies, are often just a reflection of an invisible decision that you made long before the world applauded. And that changes everything, because it gives you back the responsibility and the power over your story. It shows that a legend is not born ready-made. It is built behind the scenes, in sleepless nights, in the accumulated no's, in the torn pages, in the king. Days when no one notices how hard you are trying. What the world calls success is almost always just the surface. The true depth lies in the path that no one saw, in the process, in the invisible dot. And when the world finally sees it, it's not about fame. It's about meaning. It's about knowing that everything that seemed too small or too strange or too unlikely did, in fact, have a place. It did have value. It did have a destiny. And more than that, it had impact. Agatha Christie didn't just write mysteries. She wrote proof that the story of one introspective woman can shape global culture. She changed the game without playing the way anyone expected her to. She created her own rules. And in doing so, she paved the way for thousands of other silent voices to find their own way to scream, even if it was on paper. Comment: this is just the beginning. I want to know who else feels like they are about to transform the invisible into something eternal. And you? What story is hidden inside you, waiting for the courage to be born? Maybe you are living a moment similar to Agatha's right now, where everything around you seems too quiet, where the days follow a rhythm that no one notices, where you feel like a piece out of place in a scenario that is expected of you to accept without question. Maybe you are trying to maintain your composure while inside something screams, something that no one sees, something that maybe not even you know how to name. But you feel it. It is at this point in the journey that many people stop, not for lack of ability, but because they believe that if no one is watching, then it is not worth continuing. But what this story shows us with strength, clarity, truth, is that precisely in these moments of silence lies the chance for a change. Agatha was not sure of anything. She did not know if anyone would read what she was writing. She only knew that she needed to write. Because there, among the words that did not yet exist, there was a part of her that finally felt alive. Have you ever had this feeling? Of carrying something so personal, so intimate, that seems to have no place in the world? A talent that no one values? An idea that seems out of time? A project that lives only in your thoughts because, for everyone else, it is too crazy, too dreamy, too difficult? What if it isn't? What if, like her, what is missing is not an external sign, but just an internal choice? What if this is precisely the moment that will count the most in the future? We learn to wait for permission from others, to wait for life to become easier, for fear to diminish, for someone to say, go. But what if no one does? What if you are the only one who sees this path for a while? That doesn't invalidate anything. It just shows that you are one step ahead, in the dark. Yes, but ahead. And that is where the hidden truth of this journey lies. Those who decide in the invisible are putting down roots. And when these roots flourish, there is no way the world can ignore them. Your story can be like that too. And it doesn't have to be about books or characters. It can be about art, music, entrepreneurship, a different way of living, raising children, bringing love to the world, and having a greater presence. The format doesn't matter. What matters is the origin, the silent decision not to give up on yourself. Have you ever stopped to think about how many incredible things in the world were born because someone who might have been broken inside decided to take a step further, even when no one was watching? Maybe it's you now. Maybe this video, these words, are the reminder that was missing. Not to push you, but to remind you of what you already know. That there's something inside. Something that deserves space, form, voice. You don't need to know exactly how it will be, or when. But maybe you do need to tell yourself that you will continue. That you will write your story. Even if you are afraid. even in the dark, even in silence. Because the difference between those who pass through life and those who mark generations is an invisible decision. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining me on this journey. I know this kind of conversation isn't just about a writer or the past. It's about you now. It's about everything you carry that maybe no one sees, but that has the power to transform so many things. If this made sense to you, leave a comment below with the phrase, "My decision starts today." That way I'll know that you stayed until the end and that this message found its place. And if this video made you think differently, if it awakened something inside you, leave a like. It's a way of showing me and YouTube that this type of content deserves to continue to exist. And of course, if you feel that this space helps you remember who you are, subscribe to the channel. This is how we keep this conversation alive, with truth, with depth, and with stories that continue to resonate long after the video ends. There is a video here on the side that complements this subject. Click and continue with me there. The next spark could be right there.